why do you think these avatars of Shiprocket, before Shiprocket became what it is, could not scale?
I think it's all about timing. When we started Rocket, which was early in 2012 and 13, we were adopting marketplaces very early on. We had the top 5 marketplaces, and the Indian consumers were adopting marketplaces first. Direct commerce wasn't as evolved, so digital marketing was not as, like, you can't find enough talent for digital marketing back in the time. The market had to mature to get there. It's not like it wouldn't have worked. It could have worked. It's a founder DNA, I think. Very, very dependent on, are you someone who can stay and sustain that long enough to see that whole thing play out? And we were just not comfortable. It takes a lot of money, and you are dependent on external capital to survive every few quarters. It just became too much of a risky move. In the beginning, of course, it was because it was a very fundamentally unit economics, sensible business, let me put it that way, because I have a cost which is, I know, there's a selling price I know, and then the servicing cost was, if you can keep the servicing cost in control, it's always going to, each shipment is going to be a profitable shipment.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Lunch Break with Lightspeed. I'm Romit, and today I'm extremely excited to host Vishesh, who is the co-founder of Shiprocket. Shiprocket, I'm sure all the listeners know, is an enablement platform that's literally transformed the way Indian brands sell online. Today they have over 100,000 merchants, process 1.6 million shipments a month, which is 10% of market share of all the brands that are going direct to customer, and have essentially transformed the way in which brands have sold online. Vishesh also heads Tribe India, which is the offshoot of Tribe US, where they look to back path-breaking early-stage founders. Vishesh, really excited to have you with us, and thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Vishesh, look, the story of Shiprocket has been covered in multiple forums. Some of the listeners here might know that you started as Craft Rocket, almost building a Shopify for India, and then you had another vertical, Craftly, which was selling curated products, long tail products, in a marketplace format, a little bit as you have described it in the past, adjacent to Meesho or a Meesho-like kind of a company. This is back pre-2018, 2016.
Yeah, 2015 almost.
So 2015.
15, 16.
So, let's start there. I'm curious, both of these ideas were ahead of its time. Meesho, of course, has turned out to be a massive company. Shopify for India, the brand ecosystem in India has obviously exploded. Why do you think these avatars of Shiprocket, before Shiprocket became what it is, could not scale?
I think it's all about timing. When we started Rocket, which was early in 2012 and 13, direct commerce, we were in a marketplace, we were adopting marketplaces very early on. We had the top 5 marketplaces, and the Indian consumers were adopting marketplaces first. Direct commerce wasn't as evolved. The other side of the problem was the merchants were not also, there was a long gap in terms of, large gap about awareness. So digital marketing was not as, like, you can't find enough talent for digital marketing back in the time. People didn't know what digital marketing was. People didn't know what e-commerce operations mean. So it was very early on. So you could probably, what we did was we made the website development process easier and cheaper. But once you have a website up and running, all the process, what is needed after, was still, I think,
right from finding the customers themselves.
Yeah. So it was a little, I think, ahead, a little early for the market. So market had to mature to get there, and it did work, but it's not like it did not work. But your aspirations and how large business you want to build are different things. So we also, that business was scaling well, but it also had a lot of churn. And when you have churn, the whole premise of a tech business is always about retention, because that is your profit.
Yeah.
So when you have a lot of churn, it's always good to take a call and analyze what is going wrong. So there was a large gap of post-commerce services than just a website. Yeah, that was Rocket, I think. And yeah, same thing with Craftly. I think a niche marketplace, and we have seen a bunch of those in 14 up until 18. There were many marketplaces which came with very, very specific categories. Almost none of them worked because consumer behavior and catalog of Amazon and Flipkart kept growing. So niche marketplace couldn't play a role at the point. The other was the order generation cost from digital marketing for a marketplace was always high. So either you stay long enough to take the entire journey and spend the entire capital for coming years, or you take a call. For us, it's not like it wouldn't have worked. It could have worked if we had. It's a founder DNA. I think it's very, very dependent on, are you someone who can stay and sustain that long enough to see that whole thing play out? And we were just not comfortable.
And say a little bit more about that. That's very interesting because you were in a space that was obviously quote unquote hot. It had seen some amount of investor funding as well. For a lot of, and all of your first time founders, right? In some sense now, for a lot of founders in that scenario, perhaps they would think, okay, you know what, let me stick it out. There's investor interest in this area. I'm seeing other companies or, peers scale up. Perhaps, I could beat them or scale with them. You said something very interesting. It's about founder DNA and we were not comfortable. It means you need to know yourself really well, right? Say a little bit more about what was that instinct ki yaar ye nahi chalega. Let's maybe perhaps move on and try something else.
So the biggest reason, at least very, very personal for me, and of course I can say for my co-founders as well, it's when the business takes a lot of money and you are dependent on external capital to survive every few quarters, it just became too much of a risky move from a business standpoint. There's nothing wrong with that. I think people have built phenomenal large businesses using that methodology as well. We were just not comfortable with like either zero or some game. Like we were just not comfortable with that. That every few quarters you had to raise capital to survive and pay salaries and everything else. That boils down to how we all came from family business background. We just didn't understand this model very well. So you kept spending to grow until a certain point. That became too risky. So that was a risk we were not willing to take. The other was we understood SMBs or B2B much better than consumer. So that's we knew about ourselves, what we can do best. That was a call, I think, depending on just personal choices. Money was there. So one mistake I think we definitely did once and never did again was trying to catch a trend. Where what is the theme of the season and where is the investor interest coming, and let's try and build a product around that. Which never had. I think for many it never worked. A lot of people saw us funding dropping in one certain category and started businesses in those categories. When the top dropped, the ecosystem got wiped out. Because you were dependent on that one person.
One person as the guiding star for that category almost.
Or you were waiting for him to buy you out. Or
correct.
I think that's a risky move. It's nothing wrong or right. I think we are not mature enough to say what's wrong or right, but definitely we were not someone who could say that I will spend 5 to make 1. It was just not working out for us in that world. The other is we could also see that 3 years, 4 years later, will this become like I'll spend 5 and make 15 or I'll spend 5 and make 6? That's a big difference. If you cannot see that trend line towards 15, it's not even worth trying that out. And it's pure maths. You can always model it out on a lot of Excels and you can always model it out. We have always tried to model it. If you can't do it in Excel, you will never be able to do it.
When you started doing logistics, was your sense that this could be a large business, or was the sense that this is a more capital efficient business and let's see where it goes?
The first thing that how we came into logistics was when we were running our own marketplace. And we were fairly well funded, engineers, MBAs, all kinds of people in our setup, right? We had a decent team at our disposal. The biggest problem we faced while running a marketplace was logistics. So that was a big signal about the ecosystem that if I, with all my resources, I'm not able to move a packet from A to B effectively, how a small brand or SMB could never have done that. That was a clear, there was no doubt about that if I'm having such a, and Shiprocket was actually built for internal use at Craftly. We built some level of tech layers to optimize our own operations, saying that no one has given, there is no tech available, we'll build it ourselves. So the allocation engine, the API based label generator, all those basic stuff, the one single dashboard for all partners. This was all built for internal use. And then I think a lot of brands we were talking to, because CarTrocket was still there. A few of my customers, good thing we all have done throughout our journey was stayed in touch with our customers. We personally talked to each one of them. I have personally sold to the first 3,000 website plus. I did personally. So I know each of them. They're on my WhatsApp. We still connect. We still talk about a lot of things. So we kept on exchanging information of their challenges. That obviously solidified that saying that logistics is there. Logistics and payments both actually were definitely large problems for commerce to work. And if someone cannot solve logistics, no matter how easy or cheap the website is, no matter how easy or cheap digital marketing gets, if you can't move the packet,
that breaks the whole experience. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter anymore and that's why I believe Flipkart did the right move when they started. Was they were the first ones to insource their logistics.
Correct.
And that move actually made all the difference.
So, let's go deeper there. I think that's very interesting. So, I mean, extreme customer centricity, I think that's been a hallmark of Shiprocket, and so many brands that I speak with are personally sort of delighted by the service you provide and are reliant on it. So, I guess that's been a hallmark of the company for years. The question is still, though, how does it become a large business? Now, you're looking at back in 2016, 17, thereabouts. You realize that logistics is a problem, but you're not actually fulfilling the orders. In some sense, you're a fulfillment engine. You would allocate it to the right partners based on certain parameters that are defined. In that, you could perhaps charge a SaaS fee, or you could take a cut of the transaction fee, right? Like those are the only two ways in which you could perhaps think about making money when you're thinking about, okay, let's try to do this model. To make a SaaS fee out of SMBs in India, traditionally that's not a model that's scaled. To make a big business out of a cut of a transaction fee would need you to underwrite that this will become a massive segment that just explodes going forward, right? I'm curious, what were the conversations back then on the size of the prize almost when you started doing this?
In the beginning, of course, it was because it was a very fundamentally unit economics sensible business, let me put it that way, because I have a cost which is I know. There's a selling price I know, and then the servicing cost was, if you can keep the servicing cost in control, it's always going to, each shipment is going to be a profitable shipment because it's all about the servicing cost. And when you hit scale, the economies of scale kick in, your servicing costs get spread out between thousands of customers, you'll always be profitable. That was the fundamental premise, that this business seemed like logically sensible. That was one. The problem size statement was big enough. That was two. We always thought that if it would have not become a large valuation business, it definitely would have become a great profitable business. So between both of them, the choice was obviously why not. Either way, it's a good outcome. If you can build a profitable business and sustain forever, or you can build a valuation business. But valuation was never a criteria to make a choice. That never occurred. That never was even a decision-making factor. That can this become a large valuation business? Once we answered the profitability part, it was an easy choice from there on. That
very interesting.
The quality will answer itself eventually.
Very interesting. And then almost in a way, I think you made the right business decision. And it just so happened that the market absolutely caught fire.
The market changed. I think COVID, for however unfortunate that the whole thing was, the whole pandemic, it did change like a whole behavioral shift. We leapfrogged 5 to maybe 8 years ahead of how traditionally it would have grown. So there was a strong behavioral shift from both sides. Businesses who realized that we need to have a digital presence, and consumers buying online. New addition to buyers, I think we had about less than 35 or 40 million unique buyers before COVID. When I say unique buyers, it's like
this is unique buyers on the brands that you sell.
Direct commerce ecosystem, mobile platform who have interacted with me.
Okay.
So like one mobile number, he could have been shopping on various websites, but a single mobile number buyer, that was like 35, 40, and that jumped to 120 million in like less than 24 months, because we just saw a lot more new buyers just participated in commerce. So it was good from both sides. And for us as a company, I think we were prepared to handle a scale, given we had 6-7 years of experience behind us. We had a decent team at us, and we knew how to hire fast. There was a lot of learning behind us. So we were prepared to handle the scale. I remember there was a time when we had to shut down our acquisition because we couldn't, with the amount of leads we were getting, there was not enough resources to call or service them. So we actually took a call, let's shut it down, but that call did not last 7 days, it lasted 48 hours. Because within 48 hours, we could move like teams and resources around and build very rudimentary automation and onboarding for us to be able to service them, which is what matters most. I think Paytm had their moment of demonetization.
Absolutely.
The fact that you were there and you can handle it is both different things. Just existence might not solve it. It's about how you react to that opportunity is bigger one.
And then so maybe talk a little bit about that, right? I think if somebody looks at Shiprocket, it would seem like CraftRocket, Craftly, hunt for PMF, and then I think something clicked in 2018, and then COVID, it caught fire and it scaled. I think one thing you had told me is that it seems like a quick success, but there were 5-6 years of learnings and journey behind that allowed us to capture that moment, right? And I think you're alluding to it something similar today, that you had that experience where it allowed you to capture when the lightning struck in a bottle for you. Just what were those learnings, right? That internally that organization had figured out.
One, of course, the biggest learning was how Indian ecosystem, because Shiprocket today is finally a business which you cannot replicate saying we are X of India. I think we have finally achieved that point of which is a very India specific. So one thing is what worked outside will definitely not work the same way in India. So that took us a while to learn because we were, in fact, we also were copying some existing models which had scale in other parts of like developed economies. We were trying to replicate those as well. So one big learning was this: if you have to build a large business in India, it has to be unique to India. Your servicing, your way of operations, your tech, everything. So that was one big one. The other was just as a entrepreneur, as a management individual, you learn a lot about hiring the right people. You learn a lot about optimizing. We learned a lot about automation with tech. So how can you reduce cost of sales, servicing, all kinds of things using tech. Those were the ideas we had to figure out when we were like seed stage. So you had to figure out some of these ways of doing things effectively. That worked at scale. Because we could actually, because the DNA was all about solving with tech, not people. That DNA always helped us keep our servicing cost very low. And every merchant, even if they do like 10 shipments a month, is a profitable merchant. Because the biggest cost is servicing. CAC is one part of it, but with a merchant that small, your revenue will be very small. So if he calls you thrice, the revenue is gone. So till then you can keep that part in control, you are profitable. So those learnings, of course, from previous two businesses, because we were trying to optimize those from a unit economics point of view, did help a lot into maturing and scaling faster. Plus, we had also experimented with a lot of strategies like sales tactics, on merchant onboarding. We already had known that what works and what doesn't. So when we finally raised a decent capital, we knew where to spend actually. We were not experimenting at that point. There were some learnings behind that this channel works, let's go deep in that channel.
Maybe, one thing I'd like to understand is if you started with, let's say, helping your clients make the best choice in terms of logistics partner. And today, of course, Shiprocket does a lot more and, I'd love to hear what more have you enabled for them. But if you started there, how did you think about building defensibility for yourself? Was that the dynamic at play, or was it something else that allowed you to, build defensibility in the space that you were building in?
I think the defensibility was created by the market itself because the supply chain infrastructure of India was fragmented. A single partner cannot cover the nation. And every e-commerce business, the whole point of going online was to reach out to the entire nation. So the problem itself was defensibility because there is no way a company wanted to work with one single partner.
Correct.
Because the service levels were just not there. So aggregating all partners into a single platform was enough of a mode to at least get going. And then the second part became the whole intelligence bit. How do you effectively start using data, which we eventually learned through our maturing of our journey, that using data and making better decisions, just that simple stuff, added so much percentage to the end conversion. So very small things.
Maybe give me an example or two. That sounds interesting.
The example is like, let's say Courier A is great into northern part of India and Courier B is great on southern part of India. But it's not like Courier A doesn't service the southern part. They do it. They are just not good at it because they don't have the captive infra. They might partner with someone. And when you do this shipment decision making, allocation of the shipment, whom to choose, that's coming from pin code. Well, I have attempted this combination of pin code, that pin code 1, pin code 9. I have attempted this combination, let's say 10,000 times. And between those 10,000, I have done this with 10 different partners, 1,000 times each. You get a sense of the performance benchmarks of out of the 1,000, this partner actually ended up delivering 950 versus this one who did 650. There's a clear signal that there is some service deficiencies here, and if you allocate the order to this partner, you are better off converting better.
And then what matters to that end customer, right? Like now this is incredible amounts of data that you can process to give I guess, I don't know, 99% confidence interval, kind of a foresight, like, prediction on, okay, we think this is going to happen if you go with this. How much of that matters to the end customer, in which case brands for you, right? Would they be okay if the data was not that accurate, or do you think it creates real defensibility?
For a brand, he's only worried about his end SLA performance, right? He doesn't care how you do it. I don't think so. My merchant, while someone would be curious to know how this is done, end of the day, they want 98% delivery conversion or 90. So that's the number that matters to them, because that is the cost. And that's the difference between them making money and not making money.
Yeah.
So
just that reliability, high throughput reliability.
So if you can, today we also started working with enterprises where they only came up to us saying that we already have the entire infra set up. We work with every partner. I'm a large customer. If you can underwrite a basic SLA for me, I'm willing to work with you. How do you underwrite basic SLA? Then we took over. We said, I will guarantee you 96% efficiency on SLAs. If I miss, I will refund you the money. So every percentage you miss, I am liable to pay the penalties of it. Now that puts immense pressure on the entire system to make sure it happens, and you put the right processes and everything in place.
Yeah.
So because we have data, we can actually now be confident saying that I'm going to be liable for penalties.
Incredible.
That worked.
Incredible. Okay. I guess that was very interesting to sort of learn about how that data builds that moat in this business. I'll ask one more question to you. This is something you spoke about, that India market itself is unique. So what you have to build for India has to be unique. It cannot be X of India. It has to be for India, almost, in a way, right? Maybe, share what are some of the big nuances that you notice about the Indian market that necessitate a unique solution, perhaps, which would have to be different from what might work in different markets.
So first learning was simply saying that I will solve this with tech. There is no such thing. It is a healthy mixture of tech and ops. It's not like I can today, Shiprocket is a 1,000 people organization. Yeah. If I was a pure play tech platform, I might not have needed that many people. Yeah. But how do you make sure that unit economics even work? But this, in a country like ours, one is how do you mix like human level ops and optimize it with tech is the thing. Like similarly, just having a tech, if I had just tech, I could be passing information using APIs between my seller to the end partner. An end partner is not even reading their information. Okay. Someone still has to call them and say, please do this job right now. Yeah. So very basic stuff, but yeah, it's unique about how do you operate. Tech can optimize a lot of things, but
yeah, I guess social interactions or business interactions are structured differently, and you have to adapt to it.
Adapt to that. Yeah. The other is how India is. So how do you charge? How do you price your product? Because like you already mentioned previously, SaaS something. Indian SMBs do not understand the model of saying I will pay for tech. It's still not fully developed there. Correct. So they need to understand the ROI. So we are a very ROI driven market. You charge me, you can charge me millions. But if I am making 10 million off you, I'm very happy to pay you $1 million. Versus saying that this tech does something and I pay a fixed $1,000 a month. It's still not a position we have reached where we can just charge a fixed SaaS fee on tech. Yeah. How do you price that? Keeping fair to both parties, for me as the individual who's servicing you, and for the merchant, it's not that expensive. Yeah. So how do you get to that version of pricing? That's a big one. So big learning on ROI based servicing. So every time we do something in this company, if he makes more money, he's very happy to pay us.
And have you found out like what that magic number is, almost, in a sense that this
is a magic number? So it could be even like, I'm happy to pay you 1 if I just make 1.5 of you. But I will not pay you 1 if I'm only making 1. Like there's no...
Sure, like this, okay, yeah.
It's very basic. Like, I'm happy to pay you from the money I make through you. That money can be anything. How do you justify that? There are areas where we have been able to justify some products saying, here is your tool, and if you convert this much, only pay me then or don't pay me at all. Yeah.
I mean, the other aspect with Indian businesses is often celebrated and now perhaps debated is just the concept of jugaad, right? Now, if somebody says that, hey, I am now making more money off you and I'm paying you an X% of that, have you found Indian businesses or your users in some sense try to subvent that in some way, or essentially try to, say, okay, now let me just try to do this directly and save this money that I'm already paying?
Let me put it out
because
there.
That's the flip side of SaaS, right?
I completely get it. Let me put it out there. There is no tech as expensive as it looks it is. So if you end up paying for a tech which is like couple of 100Ks a year, I'm definitely sure you can definitely build it.
Yeah.
So that's true for everyone. What matters is my mode of the platform is not the tech. And few engineers can sit and make the allocation engine. Few engineers can make the label generating APIs. That's not the play. I think over time the data we have been able to gather and the intelligence over that data, and as it become bigger and bigger, the intelligence becomes better and better.
Yeah.
That you can't replicate internally because my data comes from a mixture of 1.6 million shipments spread across 200,000 merchants. If you are a single merchant, you only have your own data. Making decisions based on your own data will never be as effective as how I will perform. So yeah, tech is definitely easy. I will never take that away from now. And we live in, I think as AI progresses, building new technology platforms, building new software will become easier, cheaper. It's not the software that actually matters. It's how you service.
Yeah, I mean, software development itself is becoming a commodity.
It's going to get cheaper and cheaper. It's like there's no tech that costs too much.
Correct.
When someone tells me I'm raising millions to build a tech platform, I was like, it will not take that much. So let's be real about that now. We have evolved. It used to take that much. When let's say in 2012-13, I remember it used to take much.
Yeah.
But not anymore.
Yeah. No, thanks for that, Vishesh. I think very, very interesting insights. I think it's a very real lived experience of what it just takes to build a tech-first platform, but it cannot be a tech-only platform, almost in a way, right? To service a real market opportunity. You know, speaking of that market opportunity, you started this conversation by you saying that when you started this Craft Rocket Shopify for India, people just thought going digital would be enough, but everything else was lacking in the ecosystem, including even how to get customers. Obviously goes without saying the market has evolved by leaps and bounds since then. In what aspects have you found the market development to be most remarkable? Like something that even today really positively surprises you at how much the Indian market has evolved if you compare it to the days when you were, running Craft Rocket?
The biggest change has happened with the movement of social commerce, I think. Now people have realized the content game. Generating demand using content is definitely has been a big shift because alternative demand will be the play for any D2C to work. You cannot solely rely on a pure play digital marketing strategy because tomorrow Facebook changes their side of algorithms, your business goes out of profit. So there's people involved. So the other is the new generation of entrepreneurs. They naturally understand how to run this. Versus digital marketing is not because they've grew up with Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that. Versus audiences which previously we were dealing with. They never understood. It was too hard to learn also at that point. The Facebook ad platform has become better over the time, but the people using that has also become, it comes naturally to them. So how good you are on digital marketing has definitely changed. On how good are you on content is definitely changed. Every D2C entrepreneur, founder today I see is actually doing so good on doing their content play. Yeah. Definitely when I see content like Uziva, people are using the content play to the best of its advantages. Anyone, Akash at Bella Vita did a great job while building that business. So yeah, a lot of that maturity and the how to generate demand online definitely has evolved way better. Yeah. So that's the biggest shift.
What are maybe the other way to look at it is also the kind of niches that are being catered to by founders today. Yeah. I'm curious, what have you found about that, right? Like as, I guess, brands go more and more online. I mean, anyway, default brand today is online. But as they go online, there's also the real problem of clutter, right? Like, hey, there's so many now brands online. Now, in that scenario, newer brands, while they don't have to worry about infrastructure, thanks to Razorpay, thanks to Shiprocket, they'll have to worry about, okay, how do I actually find the niches that exist in the market, right? What are you finding on that front? Because you'd also work with a lot of newer brands who are coming up, right? What kind of needs are they serving? What are they doing?
I've been lucky to see some of the most unique things in this journey of Shiprocket and Cart Rocket combined. We think we need a very special niche to make a profitable or e-commerce business. Actually, I'll give you a couple of examples of things I saw. 22-year-old kid created this website selling only Rubik cubes.
Rubik cubes.
Rubik cubes. Rubik cubes. That's all he sold. Yeah. He had about 50 different types of Rubik cubes, starting from 500 to all the way as expensive as like maybe 25,000 worth of Rubik cubes. He actually built a profitable and not just like a small profitable business. I might have forgotten the numbers, but they were like a couple of thousand orders every month on an average AOV of 2500. His cost definitely was not 2500, so there was a decent margin to be made in that process. And a very profitable, making 3 to 8 lakh rupees of profit a month business on Rubik Cubes. So when we think we need a special niche to make money, it's like India. The beauty about our country, it's a large country. Every single thing has a audience and a following and a fan following and a cult, whatever you want to call it.
You know, I mean, pardon my pun, but I'm puzzled why, like this website, right, like selling Rubik cubes. What do you think allowed it to take off? Like, because Rubik cubes would be available.
Because marketplaces forgot this category was important. He just curated the right products. So when you type Rubik cubes on an Amazon, because they never thought that this is a big category or a big SKU product category, then no one focused on it. So there is a community of Rubik cube fans who love to buy this stuff. They went on Amazon, they couldn't find, they could probably have found like maybe 5-7 different types of them. He curated the 50 of them. Good stuff. Curation matters, but yeah, that's the USP there. But there's so many such categories that I came across where businesses were built on unique products. Harisamprojects.com. What he did was he created a content game on Facebook and Instagram where he used to teach people how to make a certain small project. Like you could probably make, using a DC motor and a remote control, you could probably make a boat at home. So, but what he did was he created an e-commerce website selling each and every part of the project. So that you can also now not just see my content of how to create a project, but also buy those parts from me.
And then do it yourself.
Very profitable business because and do it yourself.
Yeah.
So there are people who enjoy this stuff, like building stuff at home, building an RC car at home, building an RC plane at home, and the configuration of the right products. He just created that.
Yeah.
So there's so many of these examples on how unique categories and profitable e-commerce businesses were built on that.
Do you think in some sense it comes down to telling an authentic story that essentially connects with that audience? And that audience doesn't have to be very large today because there are massive niches and you can find them online.
One, definitely quality matters. We have seen the most competitive categories and new age brands trying to disrupt those categories. Mamaearth is the biggest example. Everyone, if someone by pure common sense would have said, I'm going to start this category, which was dominated by the world's largest FMCG players, it's very hard to even think that I will be able to make a place.
Make something correct, yeah.
But then you realize that there is an audience who cares about your story. There's an audience who cares about natural, no chemicals, whatever your story could be.
Yeah.
Everyone had their own versions of stories. Arata was built on curly hair for the longest time because people just forgot about there's like niches of these audiences, right? That's the story does matter, but after the story only matters for the first acquisition. After that, the quality will have to be justify that story.
Interesting. You know, and maybe I guess the final thing I'd love to touch upon is just a global ambition of Indian brands. India to the world has been a secular theme. Actually started off in enterprise SaaS, but today you find increasingly, of course, commerce was the second wave B2B, but now you find Indian consumer tech products also going out. A company in our portfolio, Pocket FM, is a good example of that. And then now we often meet B2C companies and even marketplaces who are trying to do India to the world kind of motions. Say a little bit more about that. And I know that Shiprocket has also launched a business to enable that. Yeah. What kind of opportunities are you finding there, and what sort of fueling that ambition to sell India to the world?
See, one, India has a strong category, and there are certain products that we are very good at making them. Let's say from a craft angle of the jewelry, silver jewelry, artificial jewelry, that category, I think we are very good at those products, designs and stuff, and price points at what we do. Not every category is working globally because they might have better imports from somewhere else, but there are very unique products that only we do. Everything about handicrafts in India is the most unique thing. The talent we have is incredible, and the cost we do it as is incredible, which is very unique. So those categories, of course, now we started cross-border business for Shiprocket. It's called Shiprocket X from Jaipur. So all the vendors who make beautiful artificial jewelry products, we are now helping them. So those categories definitely work out. And then there are categories like targeting NRIs in those regions, because they live abroad, but they still need that Indian version of products. And this is not a new thing. Haldiram's launched in the US because there was this community of NRIs who actually wanted that those weekend. All those products actually went there for a certain audience of NRIs who moved globally.
Yeah.
So those two categories definitely work very well, but very very generic ones. I think India is a large market, so not every category should be aspirationally going out. But the opportunity is definitely big.
Do you see, handicrafts, jewelry, like India has been known, or actually even if you think about it, textiles, home decor, like, Chandigarh chair, designs in Chandigarh are a rage everywhere. Are there categories that you think are newer or emerging that have not been traditionally associated with India supply edge almost in a way?
Two large ones. One I've been surprised at why it did not happen sooner, but textile. Our khadi, the fabrics that we have been able to manufacture, they were not out there up till recently. It's a very recent development where everyone understood this quality of fabric is incredible. Then the whole wave about being environment friendly, organic, we have been doing that for decades. We've always been there. Now world has started adopting that. So khadi has been a big rage over globally because it's organic, however it's manufactured, it's dyed with vegetable oil.
Correct.
So all those things really now have started becoming a story in the international market, and people have started now using that. Those categories have performed very well now, also will perform well going forward. As there is an audience who cares about natural and organic.
Natural, organic, all of that.
Yeah.
Interesting. Maybe let's end this with, this question. I'd love to understand, what do next 5 years for Shiprocket look like? Last 5 years have been an absolute, hockey stick growth, incredible journey of actually enabling Indian e-commerce, right? Not just growing the company yourself, but creating a massive positive dent in the ecosystem that's allowed so many brands to come online. Maybe what is that big revolutionary idea for you that you think in 5 years could transform this ecosystem?
I think it's been a dream of ours. So next 5 years, I think last 5 years were all about optimizing what did exist. So there was an audience who wanted to grow their businesses online, and we provided tools for them to grow their businesses online. Now we actually want to create this platform into a place where we want to create new entrepreneurs. India is the largest self-employed country, and you give them the opportunity, you give them the right tools, they will build beautiful businesses out of it. So I think next 5 years the focus is going to be making sure that we can actually create more digital entrepreneurs. So helping people actually who have never started the business, or almost have never thought about it, helping them start online businesses. So we'll go very heavy on content in terms of education on how to actually start and scale an online business. The other we'll try to go very heavy on the fintech angle of it. So creating that access to healthy credit, healthy being a very very key word here, healthy credit, enabling them. So what I envision ourselves in long term is the platform should be able to give you the answer of what to sell. Because I have data, I can tell you the hot categories, where to get it manufactured or wholesale buying from. Once you have done that, I already have warehouses, stored it in my warehouses. I already have supply chain, we'll pick, pack, ship for you. We'll do the return management, we'll do the customer service, we'll do your marketing, like give you at least tools for digital marketing, alternate tools. So if you are an individual with a laptop sitting in a room, effectively you should be able to run the entire e-commerce business with a laptop and no employees. That would be the end goal. I think that's, if we are able to achieve that, we are quite there. There's almost like 70% of infra available. It's now how do we package and design it well going forward will be the big challenge.
Yeah, and wishing you all the strength to achieve that journey. It'll be an incredible outcome for the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for taking all the time, Vishesh.
Thank you. Pleasure.
It was an absolute pleasure to host you.